Alright, so what you see here are three different guitars. All of them have the same branding on the headstock, but only one of them is real. And I'm going to go and show you a few things that make these guitars a lot different from the real thing. And in case you're wondering, that is the real thing. So right here in front of me, what you're looking at is a Gibson Les Paul 2017 traditional electric guitar. No binding around the headstock, traditional labeled on truss rod cover, binding going all the way down the neck, and binding on just the top part of the body, not on the back. A true flame maple top, not a veneer. And you know, you've got your Gibson two-mac bridge and tailpiece, which actually kind of comes to almost not a sharp line. It's a little bit rounded here, but it comes up to almost a peak in the center. You got your knobs, humbuckers, three-way switch, and you have your inlays in your fretboard, which are done very nicely. As you can kind of see, there is no filler or anything around it, so the inlays are done pretty nice. Now on this one here, it has a tusk nut on here, so kind of what a lubricated tusk nut, which is kind of nice. And the action height on this guitar did have to be adjusted out of the box, so there was a setup involved. Now as you can see here, if I can get it close enough to see it, let's see here. Possibly see it, maybe. If I can get the glare just right. Well, as you can see, getting real close to the neck, see a lot of orange peel. Now that orange peel kind of carries out a little bit out further. So even though you see a lot better at that joint, it does carry out a little bit further on the other side of the neck. But otherwise, it is a beautiful guitar. Now another thing that I've noticed Gibson doing, which the two of these that I've had, this one and another one, when you look at the side over here, the binding is kind of indented a little bit, and then the body has a lip right here. That I noticed with these guys. The first one and this one are both the same. Nice beautiful top on there, you know. Really not too much as far as what to say about it. It's a Gibson and plays very nice, very comfortable, very this one here is lightweight because it's been chambered on the inside. On the back of it you have real Gibson deluxe tuners on there, not fake ones. And this is kind of how they do their Made in USA and their serial number as far as imprinting of them. Two-piece body, no scarf joint, and no heel joint. Mahogany, real nice. All right, so let's get into the other ones. Now this one here is the Chibson fake electric guitar that has a Gibson logo on the headstock, and this is also the slash version of this guitar. Now I have not taken off any of the plastic yet on some of the components. Now, as I talked about with the Gibson, going over the tailpiece over here, this one doesn't have quite a sharp of a hump in the middle of it, as like the Gibson does. You'll also notice that there is a flathead screwdriver to adjust your action height instead of being like an Allen key that the Gibson has. And the Gibson also has a wider bridge on it, which makes it have more travel for setting up your intonation. Cheap Chinese pickups, okay? Don't think you're going to get real good sound quality out of these. Now this has the binding going up the neck and also around the body. Now as I mentioned about the Gibson, these guys here do not have a lip where the binding is meeting the body. It's pretty flush. You barely feel anything, if not nothing at all. Now as far as the neck goes, it's not too bad, although there is a little bit of filler in between the inlay and the neck itself. So like right over here, you can kind of see in that corner. If you can, let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. And focus, thank you. As you see that little black right there in that tip of that inlay, it is filler. So you'll see that on these cheap ones. Now, as far as the headstock goes, this kind of reminds me of an Epiphone headstock. I do not know about the Les Paul standards, if there's a difference between the traditionals or whatever as far as the headstock goes. This doesn't seem like it's very wide, and it also is very long. That reminds me of a Epiphone. Now, also quality control right there is a little bit of not a chip or anything else, just kind of a little bit of a burn through. All right, and also with a lot of these cheaper guitars too, the truss rod cover, the writing on them is not really as sharp as it is on the Gibsons. The Gibsons seem to have a lot more of a sharper writing on them than what these guys. Now this one here is basically like a silk screen, and that's probably what this is too, is probably a silk screen as well. Now this one here has fake, and very, very fake, Gibson Deluxe tuners on them. And how do you know that they're fake? Well, here's the kicker on them. You could barely read the writing on it. They barely have any striping going down the side. It feels very flat, all right? And the chrome is real shitty as far as the plating goes. Now in this one here too, this is how they do the your serial number. They are stamped, but they also are painted. Now quality control again, there's a little bit of a run right here, but this one has a one-piece neck, no scarf joint, no heel joint, mahogany neck, mahogany body, and this also has a one-piece body on it, which I have to say, as far as polishing goes, these guys really do a nice job. See, if I get into this crack right here, there isn't hardly any orange peel at all on this. You know, I just got my fingerprint on it. The finish on these things are pretty nice, and I think a reason why is to really impress, you know, the buyer. Oh, you're getting something that looks beautiful. Okay, all right, fine. I can understand that. But Gibson should be doing this just out of quality, you know, making sure that their guitars look fucking phenomenal, regardless of what price range. Now, one of the things that you'll notice with the other Chibson guitar, this right here, where this hump is, all right, the cutaway, they vary. This one here is a little bit different than this one here. This seems to be a lot more rounded and shorter. This seems to be a little bit more taller, a little bit more narrow, not as round as an actual Gibson is. So that's a good way to find out, you know, as far as being a fake goes too. Now, I'm sure when these things are made, they probably have a, you know, some guy cutting up the wood and shit like that instead of doing it on a CNC machine. I know that the Gibsons, I've already watched a lot of the Gibson factory videos. A lot of their stuff is cut on a CNC machine, so it's going to be next to perfect as far as templates and everything else that they have to make their guitars. Now, this one here is supposed to have a maple cap on it, not a veneer. And from what it looks like, it could be, until I get these pickups out of here to really take a look at it, I won't know. But I have a plan with these, all right? And just like any other cheap guitar that I've purchased before, there is going to be a plan. Electronics are coming off. Bridge is going to be changed out. Strings are going to be changed out. Tuners are going to be, you know, new tuners and everything. I already have parts all lined up for this. So that's a little bit of a difference between, you know, some of these guitars, China guitars, compared to the actual real thing. So let's get into the other one that I've got. Now this one seems to be the one that everybody kind of likes, and you know, I have to say too, I like it a lot myself. Now this has different block inlays on the neck compared to the rest of them. Now don't let this neck fool you, okay? This is not this is a rosewood neck. This is not, it's been stained or dyed, so don't let this neck fool you. They try to make it look like ebony or something, but yeah, they don't. And on the other Les Paul, that is a Chibson as well, it's a fucking rosewood neck. Now again, alright, so when you look at the tailpiece, these tailpieces don't come up to a sharper point as if the Gibson was. Same type of bridge, and again with the cheap Chinese pickups. Now I haven't taken the plastic on this thing off. Now this one has not been set up. This one basically I end up tuning it. The action height is pretty good, but just like the rest of these, they all have plastic nuts, and the action height is a little on the high side at the first fret. Now the inlay job that they did on this one is a lot better than the one that they did on the Slash signature one. I don't see any type of filler around these inlays at all. The frets are not bad at all, okay? Same thing with the Slash version. The frets are not bad. I've already checked them out, looked down the neck, and they all float into each other, so there's no high and low. And let's see if I can get it real close to these fret ends here. It just focuses. As you can see, the fret ends aren't even past the binding the way they have them, so you're not feeling any fret ends at all. Now the headstock. Well, to be expected, you know, the truss rod cover is a little bit off to one side a little bit. It's a little crooked. The logo, this should be actually a little bit bigger than what the actual Gibson one is. And not too sure about the Gibson logo itself. It looks like the Gibson logo that is on the headstock of the traditional, which is an actual Gibson, is a lot bigger in size. The binding is not bad at all. They actually did a beautiful job at the binding. Again, you do not feel a lip between the body and the binding, and this has the binding on both sides of it. Now this is supposed to be a one-piece body, which I've already checked it out, and it is a one-piece body, but this has a heel joint, and I don't know if you can see the scarf joint. Yeah, you can. It's got a scarf joint. Also, these are fake Grover tuners. They are not real. They turn like shit. They feel like shit when you're turning them, and again, that's how they stamp and paint their serial numbers into their guitars. But all in all, you know, it's a heavy guitar. It feels good. It doesn't feel too bad. But another difference is, see, this is a lot sharper of a point and a lot more oval than what the actual Gibson is. So as far as the quality control goes, as far as how these are made, yeah, they're meant to look full, but they are not. And also on a Gibson, when you pop open the truss rod cover, you'll see a nut inside there. These have basically an Allen key truss rod. Three-way switch, which feels kind of really tight, okay? The knobs don't feel too bad. They're a little on the tight side, but they're not bad at all. And again, I have a bunch of parts here, and this is basically what you get. These cheap fucking Chinese knobs that come with the kit guitars. That's exactly what you're getting with these. You've got kit guitar quality as far as pickups go, including on the Slash guitar. Kit guitar quality as far as your hardware goes. Although these say Grovers on these tuners, just by looking at them and the pitting and everything else, yeah, they're not Grovers. Also, the beam, as far as the tuner goes, this is bigger than an actual Grover. And then the writing on the Grover tuners, it's very distorted and not very nice as far as the quality of the writing goes. So that is a little bit about these guys here, and let's get into a little bit of something else. Alright, so I ended up taking some measurements of overall as far as the body, headstock, width of the fretboard or fingerboard, whichever you want to call it, and length of the body itself as well. So first thing we're going to go over is I'm going to tell you that the plastic nut that they put on these guitars is basically the same width as the Gibson, which is a 43 millimeter nut. So, and with also the same string spacing. So even though it's a plastic nut, at least they got that right. So what I want to do is go over this with a tape measure and let you know what the specs are, what my findings are. So let's switch over to a different angle of the camera. Alright, so here's a different angle of the same wannabe Les Paul Custom that Chibson has made. Well, China has made. And what I'm going to do here is do some measurements of the actual Gibson, which I've already done, and compare them to what a Chibson measurements are going to be. So this is where it all becomes a lot different than the actual Gibson guitar. Not only as far as what you can see, like the cutout over here and it be having a point here. This is a little bit more oval than the actual Gibson it is. This has more of a point than being rounded than the actual Gibson is. And a few other little things that are on here that make it different from an actual Gibson guitar. Well, let's get into the measurements with a tape measure, which can show a lot of differences as far as what Gibson specs are compared to what the specs of a Chibson is. So first things first, Gibson's overall from tip of the headstock to the bottom of the body is supposed to be, at least for the traditional that I have, the Gibson traditional, it is 39 3/8 as far as length. So I'm going to go ahead and measure from one end to the other. So overall I have 39 13/16. Now 13/16 and 3/8. Okay, so that's kind of a big difference right there. Now from basically the end of the nut to the saddle, which is for the scale length, Gibson is supposed to be 24 3/4. And this is basically right in there too, so that's where it's supposed to be. At least they got that right. So the nut millimeter, the nut in millimeters, as far as what is on a Gibson, at least traditional, 43 millimeters, okay? And this plastic nut that comes on the Chibsons is a 43 millimeter nut with the same string spacing as the Gibson is, so that they got right. The fretboard width and length is basically the same thing as the Gibson is, so there's nothing really different about that. Headstock length, okay, on the Gibson it's 7 inches as far as the headstock length goes. So from the tippy top of the headstock to where it meets the nut, you got 7 inches on that as well. So the overall width, which is the top two corners of the Gibson Les Paul, is supposed to be 3 3/16 as far as how wide it is. So I've got right now 3 3 1/4 as far as length, so that's a little bit different. Now tailpiece to end, as far as a Gibson goes, is supposed to be 5.5 inches. So measuring from the center of the end of the tailpiece to the bottom of the body, this is a little bit longer, not by much. It is 5 9/16 as far as the length goes with that. Now I went into a little bit different here as far as, you know, body width and shit like that goes. So I used the tailpiece of the Gibson as basically being the center point for the maximum of the width here. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out what this one is compared to a Gibson. Now Gibson says, at least measuring the traditional, the body width is 13 and an eighth. So this one here is 13, trying to make this not bend too much, is 13 and a quarter. All right, so it's a little bit bigger. Now, as far as overall body length goes, so what I did is I measured from under the fret, because this fret here is basically in the same location as the fret that is on the Gibson, and that's where basically the body is. So measuring there, on a Gibson it says that it is supposed to be 17 and a 16th, 17 and 1/16. So this here is 17 and a quarter. So the length of the body is 17 and a quarter. So I didn't bother measuring from here to here, although that the controls and three-way switch are basically in the same spot that it's cut out on a Gibson. So that's pretty much damn near perfect as far as the Chibson goes. Now I did measure though from one end to the other end as far as the pickups go to see how far apart they are. So on a Gibson it's supposed to be 6 and 3/16. So where the pickup surround is to the edge of the other pickup surrounds, it is 6 and, let's see, oh wait, nope, not 6. Oh yeah, 6 and, it's a 6 and a quarter. So this is supposed to be 6 and 3/16 is 6 and a quarter. So it's just a minor difference. You know, I don't know if that's going to mean your whole tone is going to sound different or not. So all in all, that's just a little bit of how much of a difference there is as far as the body goes of being exactly like a Gibson guitar. They are not. Between length, width, overall, there are some differences as far as Gibson specs and what a Chibson is going to be. Now again, all I have is a traditional Les Paul made by Gibson to compare these two. This one is supposed to be a Les Paul custom. Now on this one right here, the headstock on this thing is a little bit on the long side, so I know this is not going to be no 7-inch headstock. Yeah, this headstock here is 7 and a quarter on this headstock. It does have the same 43 millimeter nut with the same string spacing. Now the width of this one here is 3 and 3/8 is what the width of this one is. Now the headstock of the Gibson is supposed to be 3 and 3/16, and it's supposed to be 7 inches. Fretboard is exactly the same as far as the Gibson goes and the Chibson. I measured that up, and again, did a beautiful job as far as the frets go on this one as well. Now for overall, as far as body length goes, so measuring underneath the fret where the body meets, this one here is 17 and an eighth. So on an overall Gibson guitar, as far as length goes, is 17 and a 16th. So this one's 17th and an eighth. So just a little bit longer. About the same as what the last Gibson was. All right, tailpiece. This one here is 5 1/2. And on the actual Gibson, it's supposed to be 5 1/2. Pick up the pickup. 6 1/4. The actual Gibson is supposed to be 6 and 3/16. Overall width, 13 1/4. All right, 13 1/4. Gibson's overall width is supposed to be 13 1/8. So basically, this Chibson and the other Chibson match up pretty damn close as far as what size they are. Well, although they came from the same company, so. And you can see that the horn here is different. Plus, this is a little bit rounder, but not as round as the Gibson is. And again, the controls are basically in the same spot as the Gibson is. So I didn't even bother with even measuring them. I kind of just looked, eyeballed them pretty damn close. And if I'm off, I might be off by a 1/16 as far as the location of them. But the cutouts, or where the knobs are, basically they line up face to face. So they're damn near close. All right, so that's it as far as what these guys are, as far as being as different from Gibson as they possibly can be. Again, you take your chances when you're buying one of these. Could end up with a piece of shit, could end up with something decent. And my plans for these guys, even though they are fake, I can't sell them, I can't really do too much with them as far as making any type of a profit. And I'm not really looking to make any type of a profit off of these two guitars. It was kind of my thing as far as watching a bunch of videos, seeing what people had to say about them. Some guys got lucky, some people they got shafted pretty good. In this case, I think I may have gotten a little bit lucky with these things, maybe, but there is an overall plan for these. Now, again, I can't sell them. There's no way. They're fakes. You get trouble no matter what you do, how you do it, whatever. I could possibly give them away, but I can't sell them. But what I do have a plan is this guy right here, since it's the first one, bone nut. All parts 3-way switch. EMGs, these are, which one is this? EMG 60 for the neck, and this is an EMG 81 for the bridge. This is for the neck, and the 60 is for the bridge. Now these already come with volume and tone controls. Actual Grover tuners, which these holes are cut out for these guys. Got those. I will keep the tailpiece, but I'm going to change out the bridge with a roller bridge. This bridge here is a lot wider, so it's kind of close to the actual width of a Gibson bridge, but it's not a Gibson bridge. This is just a regular standard roller bridge that I'll bolt onto this thing with no problem and give me more room for intonation. Now, I never checked these guys out to see how well they're set up as far as measurements go or anything else. I do know that the action height on both guitars at the first fret is pretty high. This one here, the action height is pretty decent at the 12th fret. The other one is pretty bad. So that's what's going to happen with this. I'm going to keep the same volume and tone controls. I'm going to keep the tailpiece on this. I'm going to keep the surrounds. These pickups are white in color, so they will match all the white binding and the block inlays that are on the fretboard. I didn't go with a, I can't remember what the other switch. I just picked up an all-part switch. Now, your price would be $17.95. My price was $6. So get a little bit of a deal on some of these parts for these guitars, and so I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, these are actual bone nuts, even though they look different as far as packaging goes. These are actual bone nut. Now, this is a extra large tusk nut, okay, and this is for a jumbo. Does not fit this guitar, okay? This does not fit. This is wider, and the string spacing is different than what these are. So I've got several of those type of nuts, and the Graphtec nuts, and they don't fit this. They don't fit the other one, and they don't fit the Gibson, the actual Gibson guitar. So that's it. A little bit of an update. And for the Slash Wannabe, I've already got a set of appropriate Grover tuners for that, and I'm going to end up picking up a set of pickups that are basically look like the same ones that are on there, keep leaving the guitar looking like stock. They're going to be Seymour Duncans, which also have a tone control and a volume control with an orange drop cap. Yes, so why am I spending a little bit over $200 for a set of pickups for a cheap fucking guitar? Okay, well, That's just what it is. Taking a cheap guitar and making it better, right? A lot of you guys do it. A lot of you guys seen other people do it. I guess maybe a lot of guys want to do it. I don't know. But that's what I'm going to do with this. I ended up in the past taking a lot of guitars and turning them into, taking cheap guitars and turning them into something a lot better than what they were, selling them or giving them away. Okay. In this case, I won't be selling. Maybe giving away. I don't know. Who knows? Depends. Maybe I'll keep a hold on to it for a while to see how much it falls apart, being a Chibson, and you know, then strip it down and use the pickups for something else and the tuners and everything else for something else. I don't know. But as far as what I want to do and how I want to do it, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. So, you guys keep on doing what you're doing. Rock on. Take care. Have a good one, and I'll catch up with all y'all. I will catch up with all y'all later. That's what happens when you try to talk too fast. Take it easy.